Now, when we talk about why capitalism is bad for Africa, many people don't understand why I say this. But the first thing that you need to realize is that what is capitalism? At the end of the day, capitalism is about capital. And what is capital? Capital is money. Now, we all know that of all places on earth, Africa is the only continent that doesn't have a sovereign unifying currency. There's no African money. We don't have an afro. We don't have an African currency. Now, African states, the different colonized states have that money, but it's not even backed by the African minerals. It's backed by the colonizers' currency, which means that you're not even in charge of that currency. Very few African countries print that money. That money is all sent from abroad. We actually have to buy it. And we have to buy it because, because of the lack of economic independence. Because Africa received flag and anthem independence, but it didn't receive economic independence. So the money production has always remained in the hands of the Westerners. Now, a few countries have come out to try to produce their own currency, but it has been blocked. There's a lot of money that is pumped through loans and aid and grants, all these blackmail African leaders, African politicians into not doing the right legislation towards public interest. Because when they send you aid, it's unregulated, and it's a trap for the African who has been very hungry for responsibility, very hungry for capital, because there's no capital, there's no money in Africa. When they see this big money, they see these bullions, they just steal this money. And once you steal the money, now they have you in a trap. They can blackmail you, because if you don't do what they want you to do, they expose you. And when they expose you, the people turn against you. So you won't win an election, or you will be lynched as a thief, or you will end up in prison. So this way they have you under control. And so they pass you these bills. For example, during this COVID crisis, you can see all the money coming in the name of relief. But this relief is not reaching the people. Many countries in Africa have received money. They're, inflating numbers and then receiving this relief aid. They're trying to push bills to track down people and enter their homes and test them and separate families. And this whole infringement, these are going to be passed into law, and there's a lot of money being passed into, being distributed in Africa through aid, relief, whatever. All this money is being stolen by politicians, and this money will be used to blackmail politicians into, serving the capitalist interests. And this is not new in Africa. This is the norm in Africa. That's why Africans hate loans, because those loans don't benefit any Africans. And the little tax that we contribute is used to pay those loans that have only fed the families of the few top African prefects, the wealthy politicians that have been beneficiaries to this aid and loans, that have bought these expensive cars and these nice properties. In fact, that have sent all this money back abroad to offshore accounts and invested in stock exchanges in the European world. I already told you about how this aid is also used by European politicians to steal from their governments, because what's the best way to steal? Start an African foundation, push the British Parliament to send money to that foundation, and strike a deal with the executives at the foundation to send you kickbacks. And these kickbacks are not small kickbacks, up to 60%. Anyway, let's get back into it. So capitalism has been really just destructive for Africa at the end of the day, because we don't have money and we are very hungry for it. We become gullible. We become gullible, totally gullible. And when we become gullible, then we are blackmailed into policies that only serve Western interests. Now, the Western interests from colonialism, are exploitation of Africa, because Africa is the richest continent. So all they want is the raw materials to produce. So they kill the education system with things like the structural adjustment programs, universal primary education, You can't believe that because of capitalism, African healthcare and education is all, sponsored by charity, by aid from the Western world. So the IMF and whatever World Health Program are the ones that are supporting African health and African education. Now, how do you expect to empower people? Because we know that true power, true true personal capital, actually, the real true value in a person comes from knowledge. Now, if you put your whole knowledge, your whole future in the hands of a capitalist, they are going to manipulate you into a sanity that serves them. That is insane. That's why in Africa they say that if you brought back the forefathers before colonialism and they looked at how we live today, they would think we are insane. It would be totally a dramatic shift in principle, in the way things are done. And because of this, Africa can never develop under capitalism, because capitalism is just against Africa. Even the good things about capitalism, that yes, if you have a good idea, they can, you can push it, are unrealistic in Africa, because investment in Africa is only towards things that serve the West. So Africans are only left with one way to try business, because the only other way to accumulate money is through selling off your wealth. So Africans have sold off their land, they've sold off their animals, everything, and moved to the city with the little capital, hoping to set up businesses. But because they don't own the capital, they don't own the money, still the financial policies are set up to end up making you poor. So at the end of the day, a man who once owned ranches and ranches of animals and gardens of food is now stuck in the city, condo dependent. And if they have some bad education, again, from the sponsored, formal education formalized in Africa, then maybe they can get a job and survive in the city. And so there's the new pride of, oh, if you're in the city, you're better than the villagers, even if you're staying in a condo. That's garbage. It's total garbage. Africans need to leave those cities and go back to the country and own your land and take charge of your life and grow your food, grow your animals. Just think about it. How do the rich people in America or in all these countries that you like, that you love so much, how do they live? They live on ranches. They end up buying land and estates and setting up estates and living there with their families, enjoying the true nature. This is what God gave all Africans by default. Every African is born rich. But capitalism comes in, creates this fake scarcity, and then poverty, of course, erupts because Africans are not producing what they consume. All investment is towards producing raw materials, but no one consumes raw materials. People consume, the finished goods, and all the adverts are, advertising these finished goods anyway. The fired goods, the hamburgers, and the whatever. And African food is considered organic and is not advertised. You will never see any organic food being advertised, except from, the nutrients of the healthcare, these diets, diets that are also trying to, make money here or there. But that's even very rare in Africa. That's in the modern world. But in Africa, no one advertises organic food. And so the African young child is programmed to value, fiat money and fiat, things as value. And they forget the true value that they own. So capitalism is an enemy to Africa. There's no way. We can debate about this 1,000 times, but Africa needs to go back to subsistence. It will be slow, but there we'll grow far and we'll take charge of these minerals. And if we want to exploit, say, a water dam to create power, we can do that for that purpose. But we don't have to give out our land and our animals and everything else. Because what the capitalists want is they want to buy all this land and then they will enslave you in those cities. And those cities are already theirs, remember. Those cities are already theirs. So you totally be landless. You are already landless, but at least there's some little protection that makes you think you have that land before eminent domain comes. But you are landless. Now, once they take charge of also the food production, you totally become dependent on them. Healthcare, you're dependent on them. Now, they've made us dependent on them because they've killed all local initiative, ingenuity to create any good local healthcare research. African hubs are called witchcraft. African education is called, the African wisdom is not taught in school. The whole syllabus teaches you about European history and nothing about African history until later stages where you're not even interested in that anymore, where the appetite for capital has now come in, and now you're chasing the quickest money you can make. No, capitalism is just destroying Africa.